Now listen, ladies, let me tell you something. You've been texting, you've been calling, and you've been pouring all that energy into this man, wondering why things aren't moving forward. What happens when you stop texting and calling a man? A few things. And let me tell you, they are not what you might expect. When you stop texting and calling a man, something incredible happens. It might not seem obvious at first, but once you take a step back and give both yourself and him the space to breathe, you'll start to notice the shifts in the dynamics of the relationship. You see, when you're constantly reaching out, whether it's a text, a call, or a message, it can feel like you're the only one putting in the effort. Over time, this can drain your energy and create an imbalance. You might start questioning his feelings, wondering if he truly cares about you, and even doubting your own worth. But when you stop doing all the chasing, you allow both of you the chance to recalibrate the relationship and rediscover what truly matters. One of the first things that happen when you stop texting and calling a man all the time is that you begin to respect your own space. Space isn't just about physical distance, it's emotional and mental space as well. We live in a world that demands our attention constantly. We're surrounded by notifications, reminders, and the urge to respond immediately to any message that comes through. But in doing this, you might lose sight of your own needs, your own time, and your own life. When you stop reaching out so frequently, you reclaim that space, and in doing so, you remind yourself that you are worthy of respect and time. You deserve to be treated like a priority, not an option. And when you start respecting your own space, it automatically sets a standard for how you expect to be treated in a relationship. Let's talk about the second shift. When you stop texting and calling a man all the time, you stop being available 24/7. Think about it. If you're always answering his messages or picking up the phone when he calls, what are you teaching him? You're teaching him that you're always there, no matter what, and that you'll drop everything for him. But here's the thing. When you're always available, your presence loses its value. It's not that you shouldn't be supportive or attentive, but constantly being there whenever he reaches out can send the message that you have nothing else going on in your life, that you don't have your own priorities or passions. It can also give the impression that he doesn't have to work for your attention. But when you stop answering right away, or when you give him time to reach out to you instead, it subtly sends a message, I have my own life. I'm not just waiting around for you. That's not a negative thing, that's self-respect, and it's a game changer. As you start to pull back and stop texting and calling a man all the time, you'll notice that you're actually allowing him to step up. Sometimes a man doesn't realize how much he truly values your presence until it's no longer a given. Relationships need balance. And if you're always the one putting in the effort, the other person might take it for granted. But when you stop chasing him, you give him the opportunity to recognize what's at stake and to make an effort himself. This is a natural part of human dynamics. People tend to appreciate things more when they don't have unlimited access to them. By stepping back, you create space for him to miss you, for him to think about you, and most importantly, for him to realize that he needs to invest more in the relationship if he wants it to continue. It's not about playing games or trying to manipulate him. It's about understanding that effort is a two-way street. The real magic happens when you stop texting and calling all the time because you regain your power. Now, this doesn't mean that you stop caring or that you start playing hard to get in a manipulative way. It's about regaining your emotional control and setting boundaries that protect your time and energy. Often, when we are overly invested in someone, we lose ourselves in the process. We stop doing things for ourselves because we're always focused on the other person. But when you stop being so available, you start focusing on yourself again. You make time for your own interests, your friends, your career, and most importantly, your own mental and emotional health. This is where your power lies. When you are whole and confident in yourself, you don't need someone else to validate you. You don't need constant texting or calling to feel loved or wanted. You're already grounded in your own self-worth, and that's what makes you truly attractive. And here's the thing. When a man sees that you're not desperately trying to hold on to him, he starts to see you in a different light. The dynamic shifts. He knows you can live without him, and that makes him respect you more. He sees that you have your own life, and that makes him want to be a part of it even more. Confidence is magnetic. When you stop texting and calling all the time, you're showing him that you are a person who values herself enough not to chase after someone who isn't putting in the same level of effort. You become a woman who is in control of her own life. And that's exactly the kind of woman a man wants to be with. Someone who's independent, self-assured, and knows what she deserves. The most important thing is that you stop giving all of your emotional energy away. Your energy is precious, and it should be invested in someone who shows that they value it. When you stop texting and calling constantly, you teach yourself that you don't need someone to complete you. You're already complete. You can love and care for someone, but you never lose sight of who you are and what you bring to the table. You show him that you're not just sitting by the phone waiting for him to validate your existence. Instead, you live your life with purpose. And if he wants to be part of that life, he has to step up and prove he deserves a place in it. So the next time you feel the urge to send another text or make that call, ask yourself, am I doing this because I'm genuinely interested, or am I doing it because I feel like I need to chase him? Sometimes taking a step back is the best thing you can do for yourself and for the relationship. It allows both you and him to grow, to see things from a different perspective, and to understand that relationships are built on respect, effort, and mutual admiration, not desperation or neediness. The moment you stop texting and calling all the time, you take back control of your life and your heart, and that's when the magic happens. When you stop texting and calling a man, one of the most significant changes is that you stop being available to him 24/7. This shift doesn't just affect the way he sees you, but it also impacts the way you see yourself. Think about the cycle you might have found yourself in, the constant anticipation of his texts, the anxiety of whether or not he'll respond, the pressure to always be available. It's exhausting, right? You may start to feel like your entire day revolves around waiting for that phone to buzz. And when it doesn't buzz as often as you'd like, doubt creeps in. You start wondering if he's losing interest, or if maybe you're not as important to him as you thought. The thing is, you're putting all your energy into a situation that hasn't allowed for any balance or healthy boundaries. You're giving so much of yourself that you end up losing sight of who you really are. Now imagine a different scenario where you pull back and stop constantly texting or calling him. At first, you might feel a bit unsure. After all, we're conditioned to feel like communication is the cornerstone of any relationship. But once you begin to resist the urge to reach out all the time, you create space in the relationship that you didn't realize you were missing. This space isn't just physical, it's emotional. You begin to carve out time for yourself to invest in your own life and to focus on what makes you happy. Your attention is no longer fixated on him and the relationship 24/7, and that, in turn, gives you the room to start living for yourself again. You regain a sense of your own identity, a sense of who you are outside of the relationship. This is the first step in setting healthy boundaries, and boundaries are essential for any healthy relationship. When you stop being available all the time, you're also teaching him a valuable lesson. Your time is precious, and it isn't something to be taken for granted. The danger of always being there when he calls or texts is that you risk becoming someone who is always expected to be around. That constant availability can create an unhealthy dynamic where you're seen as easily accessible. It might sound harsh, but the reality is that relationships thrive on balance. If you're always available to him, you're not giving him the opportunity to miss you, to appreciate the time he spends with you, or to recognize that you have a full independent life of your own. By pulling back and not always answering right away, you teach him that your time is valuable. It's no longer about being at his beck and call. And when you stop being there 24/7, you're creating a space that forces him to make more of an effort if he truly values you. It's natural to want to feel needed, to want to feel like you're an important part of someone's life, but by constantly being available, you unintentionally send the message that you're not going to make him work for your attention. This isn't about playing games or acting uninterested. It's about giving him the opportunity to step up and prove that he values you. When you stop texting or calling all the time, you're not being passive or playing hard to get. You're simply showing him that you respect yourself enough to have your own boundaries, your own interests, and your own commitments. You are not just someone who can be dropped into his life whenever he feels like it. You are a person who has her own agenda, her own life, and someone who deserves respect, time, and effort in return for the love and care you give. This shift in availability leads directly to the next important change. You start allowing him to step up in the relationship. The truth is, sometimes men don't realize how much they value someone until that person pulls back and stops giving all their attention. It's a natural human tendency to take things for granted when they are always right in front of you. And let's be honest, if you're constantly available, he may never feel the need to put in more effort because he already has access to you whenever he wants it. But when you stop texting and calling, you give him a chance to prove that he really cares about you, to show that he's willing to put in the work to keep the relationship strong. This is not about testing him or trying to manipulate his feelings. This is about giving him the space to demonstrate that he values you enough to meet you halfway. Relationships are partnerships, and partnerships require effort from both sides. If you're the only one making an effort, you're the only one carrying the weight of the relationship, and that's not healthy for anyone. Allowing him the opportunity to step up shows that you believe in his ability to care for you and nurture the relationship. It also shows him that you believe in yourself enough to give him the space to rise to the occasion. If he's truly interested, he will step up. If he's not, then you've learned something important. He's not the one for you. But don't sell yourself short by giving all your energy to someone who isn't willing to reciprocate that effort. And when you pull back and stop texting and calling a man, you also begin to reclaim something you may have lost along the way: your power. This doesn't mean trying to control him or manipulate his actions. It means taking control of your own emotional well-being. Often, when we are deeply invested in someone else, it's easy to forget about our own needs, desires, and passion. We get so wrapped up in trying to meet the other person's expectations or filling the space in their life that we forget to nurture our own. By pulling back from constant communication, you allow yourself the freedom to remember what makes you happy outside of the relationship. You start to realize that your value doesn't depend on his constant attention, and that is incredibly empowering. It's easy to get lost in someone else's world, especially when you care deeply for them. But when you stop texting and calling all the time, you start reclaiming your own world. You focus on your career, your friendships, your personal growth, and your passions. You make time for yourself in ways that are nourishing and fulfilling, When you live a full, rich life outside of the relationship, you show him that you don't need him to feel complete. You're already complete, and if he wants to be a part of that life, he needs to meet you where you are. Confidence and self-assurance are incredibly attractive qualities. And when you stop texting and calling all the time, you begin to exude both. This shift is not about detaching or becoming distant. It's about rediscovering your own sense of self-worth and showing him that you value yourself enough not to chase after someone who isn't meeting you halfway. When you stop texting and calling all the time, you take back control of your time, your energy, and your emotions. You stop waiting for validation from someone else and start validating yourself. You become someone who doesn't need constant attention to feel loved. Instead, you understand that love is something that should come from both sides, equally. When a man sees that you've stopped chasing him, he begins to realize that he needs to put in more effort if he truly values you. He starts to understand that your time is valuable, and if he wants a future with you, he has to earn it. And that's when the magic happens, when you stop texting and calling all the time. You create space for the relationship to grow in a more authentic and balanced way. When you stop texting and calling a man all the time, you're not just pulling back from a simple habit or routine. You're actually creating the space necessary for him to step up. This is one of the most crucial aspects of relationships that is often overlooked. People can't truly demonstrate their care, commitment, or affection if they're not given the opportunity to do so. When you're always the one initiating contact, making the effort, and chasing him, you're unknowingly taking away his chance to prove that he values you. Relationships, no matter how romantic, need balance to thrive. If only one person is doing all the work, the relationship can easily become lopsided and unsustainable. But when you stop texting and calling, you allow the other person the chance to prove that they're not just passive recipients of your energy, but active participants in building the connection. Think about it this way. Relationships are a two-way street. There are times when one person will be more emotionally available or put in more effort. And that's perfectly fine, as long as it's reciprocal. But when you find yourself constantly reaching out, constantly checking in, it creates an imbalance. You're always the one investing, and over time this can be draining, not just emotionally, but mentally as well. You might start to wonder why you're the one making all the effort and not getting the same in return. By pulling back, you give him the chance to realize that he needs to step up if he wants to continue to enjoy your time and attention. This is a natural dynamic in any healthy relationship. If someone truly cares about you, they won't wait around for you to initiate every conversation or make every plan. They'll meet you halfway because they understand the importance of effort, especially when it comes to keeping the relationship alive and thriving. When you stop texting and calling all the time, you essentially shift the dynamic of the relationship. You're telling him without saying a word that you're no longer going to carry the emotional weight of the connection alone. It's not that you're giving up or walking away. It's that you're giving him the space to recognize his role in the relationship and to step up to the plate. When he sees that you're not constantly at his beck and call, it can be a wake-up call for him. He may start thinking, wait a minute, she's not texting me like she used to. She's not calling me every day. Maybe I need to step up, make some effort, and show her that I value her. This is the shift that many relationships need in order to move forward in a healthier, more balanced direction. If he truly cares about you, pulling back won't make him disappear. It will make him work harder to keep you engaged in the relationship. But here's the thing. If he doesn't step up, you've learned something very important about him. He's either not as invested as you are, or he's not ready to give you the level of commitment that you deserve. Either way, you've gained clarity, and this clarity is power. When you stop texting and calling all the time, you give yourself permission to detach from the outcome. You stop obsessing over whether or not he's going to respond to your messages or pick up the phone when you call. Instead, you begin to focus on your own life, your own happiness, and your own emotional health. You stop allowing his actions or lack thereof to determine your mood or your worth. It's important to understand that allowing him to step up doesn't mean that you're sitting back and waiting passively. It's about creating the space for him to take the initiative to invest his time and energy into the relationship. If he's truly interested in you, he'll notice your absence and start putting in the effort. This is not something that you need to beg for or demand. It's something that should come naturally from him if he values the connection. He's the one who needs to realize that you're not someone to be taken for granted. When you stop texting and calling all the time, you teach him that if he wants to keep you in his life, he has to put in more effort. That's the kind of relationship dynamic that creates real, lasting connection. Not one where one person does all the chasing while the other sits back and waits. Well, of course, this doesn't mean that you should ignore him or play games with his emotions. This is not about being manipulative or pretending that you don't care. It's about creating a healthy distance so that both of you can assess your feelings and priorities. It's about not relying on constant communication to feel valued or loved. When you stop texting and calling, you allow the relationship to breathe and grow at a natural pace. This allows him to step up on his own without the pressure of feeling like he's expected to always be there. It's about allowing him to express his interest in ways that are meaningful and genuine, rather than simply responding to your constant attempts to engage him. You also have to consider that when you stop texting and calling all the time, it's not just a test of his commitment, it's also a test of your own ability to let go of the need for constant validation. This is one of the most powerful things that can happen when you stop the endless texting and calling cycle. You regain control over your own emotional state. You stop relying on his responses to determine how you feel about yourself. You stop waiting for his approval, his attention, or his love. You start to realize that your worth isn't determined by how often he communicates with you or how quickly he responds. This is liberating. When you let go of this need for constant validation, you find a sense of inner peace and confidence that doesn't depend on someone else's action. Ultimately, when you allow a man the chance to step up, you create an environment where the relationship can thrive. You stop chasing after him, and instead you make him chase after you. It's not about playing games. It's about showing him that you value yourself enough to not waste your time on someone who isn't willing to meet you halfway. When he sees that you're not going to chase him, he'll begin to realize that you're someone who deserves more than just casual effort. You deserve someone who's willing to match your level of investment and who's willing to prove that they're serious about the relationship. And if he can't step up to the plate, then it's clear that the relationship isn't meant to be. In relationships, mutual effort is key. When you stop texting and calling all the time, you allow him to take responsibility for his part in the relationship. You're showing him that you are a woman of value and that you expect the same level of respect, attention, and commitment that you give. The relationship can only grow and flourish when both people are putting in the effort. By stepping back and allowing him the chance to step up, you're creating the kind of balanced, healthy dynamic that every relationship needs. You're no longer carrying the weight on your own, and in doing so, you give him the opportunity to prove his worth. And that's when true emotional growth happens for both of you.